How strange it is to be up here and actually to sing um, with someone else leading. I thoroughly love singing with y'all and leading the singing in this congregation as we have for the last 6 years. And um, but it's kind of good to have other song leaders as well, and I am so thankful for that. Um, George Jones. Some of you that don't know, I'm a big country music fan. And George Jones had a song that said "Her name is," and then that's the name of the song. Her name is, and he's in love with a lady he's not supposed to be in love with, and so he gets to the chorus. He sings all these nice things about her, and gets to the chorus and says, "Her name is Bow," and it has a guitar there, and kind of covers over what her name is. So today, I bring that up because today is Jennifer's birthday, my wife's birthday. It's her birthday. So wish Jennifer a happy birthday when you see her later on. Um, when Ray asked me to, actually he didn't really ask me to lead to preach. He said, "You're preaching on July 26th." I said, "Okay." Luckily, Todd preached that day, but my day came, and here I am, and this is my first sermon to preach. So it's not going to be really much of a sermon so much as I'm going to try to just teach, and that's what my profession is, and I enjoy teaching as well as I like singing. And so um, we're going to look today at Exodus chapter 3. If we be turning in your Bibles to Exodus chapter 3. We're going to look at another guy who was kind of voluntold that he was going to do something, and how he responded and how God responded to him. This may not be new information for a bunch of you. Hopefully it's uplifting though, and either brings your mind back to what you've learned before, or maybe I'll bring something new out. So Moses, he was hiding out in the desert of Midian, and Midian, in most accounts that I looked at while I was researching, is over here in this area of what is present day Saudi Arabia, across the Gulf of Aqaba, which is a part of the Red Sea, the land of Midian, but it also kind of goes over into the Sinai Peninsula as well. Mount Sinai is right here, the very bottom part, and this is a map of the Exodus, and so they spent time at Sinai. So that's the area we're talking about, and you can see that that's not very green. It's pretty rocky, and Moses is hiding out there. And I say hiding out because he's a criminal on the run. He's a fugitive. He's a forgotten shepherd. He's a man full of self-doubt. But God chooses this exact moment and this exact man to alter human history. If you have ever felt unqualified, misplaced, or utterly incapable, this text is a roadmap for your soul. Hopefully, it helps us to gain courage. Chapter 3, verse 1 of Exodus. Now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. Horeb is another word for Sinai. They are used interchangeably. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. A joke I heard once says that Moses saw that, and he went up to it and said, "No way." And God said, "Yahweh." All right, so Moses saw this bush. It was burning up, but it was burning, but it wasn't burning up. It wasn't being consumed. So it wasn't turning into ash. Moses said, "I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight, why the bush is not burned up." When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, "Moses, Moses." He said, "Here I am." Then he said, "Do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground." He also said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, "I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters, for I am aware of their suffering. So I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from that land to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Amorite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite." So God is talking to Moses and says, "This is holy ground. Take your shoes off," and he introduces himself as the God of his father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We'll see that many, many times throughout the Old Testament. And then the Lord tells Moses why he's there, why this is happening. "I've seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt. I've listened to their cry because of their taskmasters. I'm aware of their suffering, so I have come down to deliver them and to bring them up from that land." God was going to deliver the Israelites. In verse 7 and verse 9 says, "Now behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me. Furthermore, I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians are oppressing them." Verses 7 and verses 9, pretty much, if you look at just the words, say the same thing. The idea is the same. However, verse 7, we see that this is God telling Moses why he's coming, and then God's going to drop the bomb on, on Moses. And verse 9 says, "Now behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me. Furthermore, I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians are oppressing them." And in my Bible, it has a little heading there that says the mission of Moses. And then it goes on to verse 10. I think verse 10, if you want to talk about putting those things in there, that needed to be after verse 10. Verse 10 is an important one. "Therefore come now, and I will send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt." He did not ask, God did not say, "Hey Moses, will you go up to Israel or go to Egypt for me and talk to Pharaoh for me? Will you do that?" He said, "You're going." He said, "Come now, and I will send you." And so God was going to deliver Israel and use Moses to do it. God's plan has always been to work in with us and in us and through us to meet the needs of those around us. He wants to use us. But sometimes we don't really think we have what it takes. But Moses said to God, this is in verse 11, but Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt?" So Moses is thinking, okay, I'm a shepherd in the desert. I'm 80 years old. Why me? Who am I that these things should happen? But God had that plan 80 years before. We hear the story, we know the story so well of Moses being born, of Pharaoh telling the people that, or telling the midwives to kill the Hebrew babies. We know that story, and the story of Moses in the basket. Moses was taken up by Pharaoh's daughter. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the Nile, with her maidens walking alongside the Nile, and she saw the basket among the reeds. This is in chapter 2, verse 5, I apologize. And sent her maid, and she brought it to her. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the boy was crying. And she had pity on him, and said, "This is one of the Hebrew children." Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you?" Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go ahead." So the girl went and called the child's mother. So she was still able to, she was still producing milk. She was still able to feed Moses, and God intervened. And Miriam, Moses' sister, called and said, asked Pharaoh's daughter, "You want me to go get a Hebrew woman for you?" Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages." So the woman took the child and nursed him. But she got to raise her son anyway. And I'm sure that she probably told stories about their God. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she named him Moses and said, "Because I drew him out of the water." Now, from what I've seen of royalty, of royal courts, once a wet nurse is finished, they usually still have a pretty substantial relationship with the child that they nursed, even as they grow up. I don't know if that happened in Moses' life, or whether once he was weaned that they sent her away, but he knew enough about his heritage, about being a Hebrew. And Stephen, in Acts 7, Stephen is he's preaching, giving his defense, giving a history of Israel. In verse 20, we hear a little bit more about Moses' life. It was at that time that Moses was born, and he was lovely in the sight of God, and was nurtured 3 months in his father's home. And after he had been set aside or outside, Pharaoh's daughter took him away and nurtured him as her own son. 22, verse 22. Moses was educated in all the learning of the Egyptians, and he was a man of power in word and deeds. I just now noticed that last part. He was a man of power in word and deeds, but The part that I focused on first was he was educated in all the learning of the Egyptians. God was preparing him for this task. He was preparing him to go to Pharaoh. He was probably raised with Pharaoh. They were probably ran around together and had sibling rivalries and that kind of stuff. So he was probably one of the only people that could have really done that, had that effect, had that influence. He knew how the court worked and was able to use that in getting access. But the reason he was in the desert, because as he was approaching the age of 40, it entered his mind to visit his brethren, the sons of Israel. It entered his mind to see his Hebrew brethren. When he saw one of them being treated unjustly, he defended him and took vengeance for the oppressed by striking down the Egyptian. And he supposed that his brethren understood that God was granting them deliverance through him, but they did not understand. On the following day, he appeared to them as they were fighting together, and he tried to reconcile them in peace, saying, "Men, you are brethren. Why do you injure one another?" But the one who was injuring his neighbor pushed him away, saying, "Who made you a ruler and judge over us? You do not mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday, do you?" At this remark, Moses fled and became an alien in the land of Midian, where he became the father of 2 sons. So Moses took it upon himself, because it came into his mind, to go and to see his brethren, to deliver them. He supposed that his brethren understood that God was granting them deliverance through him, but they did not understand at that point. So Moses, he runs away. And he runs to Midian that we talked about before. And so Moses, the first 40 years of his life, he spent in the house of Pharaoh, in the palace. And Moses' life can be divided into pretty much 3 groups of 40. For 40 years, he was in the desert as a shepherd. And I'm reminded that when Joseph brought Jacob and his brothers, the rest of his brothers, to Egypt, that there was some place, and I don't remember exactly where it is, but it said that being a shepherd was detestable to the Egyptians. And so that was probably going to be detestable to Moses as well. But he went and did it. He went and became a shepherd. And that prepared him for leading people in the wilderness. He knew the wilderness. He knew the land. He knew what the weather was like. So what a change in Moses during his 40 years in the wilderness. Earlier, Moses tried to make himself a deliverer. And now, he was timid, unsure, and lacked self-assertiveness. Who am I that I should go? So God had been preparing him, but God didn't mention all those things. He said, "Certainly I will be with you. And this will be a sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain." So God says, "I will be with you." He has doubt, and God says, "Don't worry about it. I'll be there." So Moses, then he has another question. Moses says to God, "Behold, I am going to the sons of Israel and will say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. Now they may say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them?" And God said to Moses, "I am who I am." And he said, "Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you." The Zondervan NIV Bible commentary gives us some light on this, some insight on this declaration. It says, this name is connected with some form of the verb to be and is to be seen as expressing the nature, character, and essence of the promise in verse 12. I will be with you. Therefore, the formula means I am truly he who exists and who will be dynamically present then and there in the situation to which I am sending you. I'm going to be there with you. It's pretty much what God is saying. And he's going to say that to the Egyptians. To the Israelites. Furthermore, God furthermore said to Moses, this is in Exodus 3, verse 15, "Thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial name to all generations." So God gives his real name. He says, first of all, he says, I'm the God of your fathers. And then he gives him his name. And God tells Moses about what's going to happen when he goes to talk to Pharaoh and talk to the leaders of the Israelites. And Moses says, "What if they will not believe me or listen to what I say? Well, they may say, the Lord has not appeared to you." And the Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" And he said, "A staff." And then he said, "Throw it on the ground." So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent, and Moses fled from it. But the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand and grasp it by its tail." So he stretched out his hand and caught it, and it became a staff in his hand. Went from a staff, a stick, to a snake, back to a stick. That they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. That's 3 times he said that just in this short account. The Lord furthermore said to him, "Now put your hand into your bosom." So he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous like snow. "Put your hand into your bosom again." So he put his hand into his bosom again, and when he took it out of his bosom, behold, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. If they will not believe you or heed the witness of the first sign, they may believe the witness of the second, of the last sign. But if they will not believe even these 2 signs or heed what you say, then you shall take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground, and the water which you take from the Nile will become blood on the dry ground. So this whole incident, this whole passage of Exodus 4, 1 through 9, is about the Israelites. What if the Israelites don't believe me? And then in verse 10, Moses says the thing that I thought about so much. I mentioned in a Bible class this morning. Sometimes I get up to introduce a song when I'm leading singing, and I may have a thought about it or something, and then I get to the end of what I wanted to say, and I just kind of stop and don't transition, and I do uhs a lot. Somebody's probably going to be watching my video later on and counting the uhs. Okay, this is my first time, but Moses said to the Lord, "Please, Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither recently nor in time past, nor since you have spoken to your servant, for I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." And this just came to me because remember we looked back at what Stephen said about Moses in Acts. And I mentioned that he was educated in all the learning of the Egyptians, and he was a man of power in words and deeds. Now, that's kind of interesting in my opinion, that Moses had been so long not doing those things that he felt like that he couldn't do it anymore. Moses could be like Thomas Jefferson, who it's said was a very good writer. He wrote our Declaration of Independence, but was not a good speaker. Could be like that. That may be the same thing, but I think it interesting that that Stephen mentions that he was a man of power in words and in deeds, and now he's trying to get out of doing work for God. And he said, Moses said to the Lord, "I've never been eloquent, neither recently nor in time past, nor since you have spoken to your servant, for I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." The Lord said to him, I love the Lord's response. The Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord?" He's kind of like, "I've told you already, I'm going to be with you." And then, or he says it again, "Go then, now then go, and even I will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to say." And Moses gives one last plea. But he said, "Please, Lord, now send the message by whomever else you will." Will you let somebody else do that, please? He wanted somebody else to do it. So Moses changed throughout this conversation and throughout his 40 years in the wilderness. I mentioned it already, that in 40 years before, he made himself a deliverer. He thought, "I could be a deliverer, and I'm going to go and deliver my people from the Egyptians." And now he's been tasked with doing that and doesn't believe that he can. Then the anger of the Lord burned against Moses. God was getting mad. He's like, "Okay, you told me 5 different things that make me not want to, or to try to change my mind. I'm not changing my mind. I'll send you Aaron. You tell Aaron what to say, and he'll say it. Your older brother." I need to wrap this up. So we can see that Moses, he listens to God, he hears God, he does what most of us would probably do in trying to change God's mind. Honestly, we know that if we're wanted in that other place, we don't want to go and be subjected to that. We're a fugitive. We don't want to deal with the hassle of that. God will accommodate our weaknesses. He understands that we're weak in some ways, but he will not tolerate our disobedience. We talked about that earlier in Bible class with Saul, and the fact that Saul did not totally destroy the Amalekites, and it cost him his kingship. God will accommodate our weaknesses, but he will not tolerate our disobedience. Excuses are just lies wrapped up in the language of humility. Chapter 8, or verse 18. what does Moses do? Starting in verse 18, then Moses departed and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, "Please let me go, that I may return to my brethren who are in Egypt, and see if they are still alive." And Jethro said to Moses, "Go in peace." Now the Lord said to Moses in Midian, "Go back to Egypt, for all the men who are seeking your life are dead." Verse 20, so Moses took his wife and his sons and mounted them on a donkey and returned to the land of Egypt. Moses also took the staff of God in his hand. So he eventually did it. Just like I'm up here today. Ray kept talking to me about it, kept mentioning it, and that's part of the reason why I'm up here today. I hope that you have been encouraged by this, that God is with us. If God asks you to do something, He's going to provide you the way to do it. And I pray that you have been encouraged with that. If anyone is here that does not know the Lord, that would like to maybe study the Bible more, to learn more about Moses and Jesus. I didn't mention Jesus very much, but he's pretty important, and I should have probably mentioned him more. But Jesus loves us. God loves us. And if you have a need that we can help you with, please come forward as we stand and sing.